Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We are back, y'all. We are back. We are back. Man, I went to a funeral this past week and hung out with some family, some friends. Got a chance to visit with some folks, and there were a lot of folks there. And often we find ourselves in these social situations. And one of the most challenging things that happens in these social places, particularly as it comes to the things we do as it relates to food, because a lot of what we do revolves, includes food, including things like weddings and birthdays and funerals. And so I'm sitting there, and we had gone down, and I hadn't eaten that morning. And so we are there, and everybody's sitting around. And so I sat down, and what do you do when you sit with a group of people, particularly as you are kind of reminiscing and talking and going through those connections that we have? A lot of it surrounds food. And here this month, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how does food interact with our disease? How does food interact with where we find ourselves? How do we deal with food? And today we're talking about the cheat code. We're talking about those things that we can do that decrease the spikes in our blood sugar. Hey, if you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, we educate, empower, and encourage you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, y'all, new year, new you. I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes. Those people who want to put their diabetes in remission. Those people who want to reverse their diabetes and get off of some of that medication that you're on. That's what we're working on. New year, new you. If you're new to me as well, go ahead and put new in the comments, because we'd love to say hello and let you know that you are welcomed to the community. Give you a hand clap and a shout out and some music. Also, if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the comments, because we will answer those as we get through the show. And you guys know how we do what we do when we do it here on the channel, right? So I've got my meter. Okay. I've got my meter. And as soon as I said that, it didn't come up. I've got my meter over here, and I'll show you that here in just a minute, so that you can see what my blood sugars have been doing. We have, let me pull this one over. All right. So we've got our graphs. Yeah, there you are. We've got our meter, and we're going to take a look to see what my blood sugars have been doing. And there's some stuff I want to show you in terms of what's been happening with my blood sugar over the last few days. And I did something here today that I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys. Okay, so we've got those coming up, and so you'll get to see those as we go throughout the show. And then, of course, take a look at my Libre. And y'all, look at me, look at what I got on. Okay, let me do this one. There you go. Right, so we got our T-shirt, our food triggers. Right, remember that's our heat model. Habits, emotions, access, and taste. So we've got that on as we continue our new year, new you. I do see some folks out there. Let me just do a quick shout out. I see G. Albert. G. Albert says, "Hey man, glad you're here." He says, "Don't cheat, just eat reasonably." Face red, smiley. I love it. And Teresa said, "Evening, Dr. Wood and everyone." Hey, glad that you guys are out there. Whatever platform you are on right now, glad that you are here. We are not right now on Instagram. We're still having some interesting issues over there on Instagram. But if you know somebody who's out there maybe waiting to see us, go ahead and let them know that they can catch us on here on YouTube, of course, on LinkedIn, on Twitter or X. LinkedIn, Facebook, and I think that's it. But anyway, so we are here, and then they can come over here, of course, on YouTube. Well, y'all. So one of the things that we've been talking about, and remember the premise when we started. Our premise is that our insulin is what's causing the problem. Okay? Insulin resistance. And specifically now we're talking about type 2 diabetics. As you know, type 1s are insulin requiring. So we're talking to our adults with type 2 diabetes right now. So insulin is our issue. And so our plan as we move through this reversal, this remission, getting off of medication, is number one, how do we decrease insulin, whether it's exogenous, that is insulin that we are taking from outside, or endogenous, the insulin that our body produces. How do we suppress our appetite? And how do we get rid of sugar? Those are the three pillars that we're working on, right? And that is basically the basis on which we are talking about putting our diabetes in remission. So last week we talked about food, starchy versus non-starchy foods, and you can go back and watch that show and kind of review that. All right. We've been doing several things here on the channel in terms of fasting. You've got to have done that. Emotional intelligence, and tonight we're talking about food. And I love what G. Albert said. G. Albert said, "Don't cheat, just eat reasonably." Right? Just eat reasonably, and I love that. And that really is going to be kind of the underpinning of our long-term plan, right? So our long-term plan is when we get to the end of this year, y'all, right? Several of you are going to be off of some medications. Your diabetes is going to be in remission. Your diabetes is going to be reversed. And when we say reverse, that means that you are not on medication to control the blood sugars. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, okay? So long term, though, how do we sustain that? And long term, what we're doing is we're learning through this process right now. This year that we're going through, new year, new you, we are learning the tools that we need to basically be able to do what G. Albert is saying, right? Because ultimately, we want to be able to be in control of the things that we're doing, right? The HEAT model. And the reason we talk about the HEAT model, and let's see where, right. The reason we talk about the HEAT model is that the HEAT model gives us an idea of those things that push us in a direction that we don't want to go in terms of food, right? The habits that we have, the habits that we have created, the emotions that come along that push us to eat, the access that we have, right? And the taste of the food. Those are the things that can derail us. And so all of the tools that we're learning is with this in mind. So tonight we're talking about the cheat code. We're talking about hacking food, right? So what are those ideas that we have that we can use in the process of preventing those blood sugar spikes? Because if the blood sugars spike, then the insulin comes out. And remember, insulin is the culprit. When the insulin comes out, the insulin does a lot of things that we don't want to do. The insulin is the signal. It is the switch, y'all, that says that all the stuff, the energy that we just took in, that has to go into storage. And so as soon as insulin comes out, that food is going to right here, right? That weight that you put on, that comes because of insulin. Because as soon as you eat something, if the insulin is up, then the body's going to start storing some of that. Insulin causes fatty liver. Yeah. Insulin, when it comes up, causes cravings. Right? People say, oh, I just love that thing. Well, the reason you love that thing, that particular taste, is partially because of insulin. So what do we do to minimize the spikes in blood sugar? And as we minimize the spikes in blood sugar, thereby minimizing that big push that we have in terms of insulin, right? So here's where we're heading, y'all. Here's where we're heading. This is our agenda. So create the life you want, avoid complications, and go to the next level. That's what we're talking about. Okay. So take active steps toward better diabetes management through informed dietary and lifestyle changes and lifestyle choices. So here's where we're heading, right? So one, we want to talk about the timing of food. What is the power of timing? We want to talk about acidity, the advantage. And you guys have seen things that people have been talking about acidic food. We'll talk a little bit about that. Retrogradation. What does that mean? And how does that impact our blood sugars? And how does it impact the food? Glycemic index. What does that mean for us? It's something that I actually have not pushed with a lot of my patients because, as I'll talk about it in a minute, for a lot of them, it is something to be aware of, but there are some other things we want to take care of before we get to glycemic index. The benefit of muscles, y'all. Benefit of muscles, and then of course naked carbs, right? So that's where we're heading. And let's see, we see Satra Del Rey. Hey Satra, thank you for stopping by. Let's give you a hand clap and some music. And she said, replay crew, I'll be back. I love it. All right, so let's hop to it. Let's get to our discussion. And so the first thing we want to talk about is the power of timing. The power of timing. And you guys know that we've been talking here about timing, dealing with some allergies. We've been talking about timing, and the timing that we've been discussing is this idea of fasting. How do we fast? How do we deal with food? But tonight, what I want to do is I want to talk about timing. And I want to get you to understand something that I think often is not realized. And that is that, well, let me do it this way. So I've got a guy who eats carrots and his blood sugars go to 300 from whatever it was, say 100. But he eats ice cream and blood sugars don't change. And so he comes to me and he says, hey, Dr. Wood, I can eat ice cream and nothing's happening. And he goes out one night with his wife and he comes back to see me maybe several months later. He's like, Dr. Wood, you'd never believe what happened. I went out one night with my wife and I ate ice cream. And he said, my blood sugars went to 300, just like with the carrots. And so I asked him, I said, what was different? He said, nothing is different. I had the same amount of ice cream, same kind of ice cream. And I asked him, I said, when did you eat it? He said, like I said, we went out at night. I said, when do you normally eat ice cream? He said, yeah, normally I eat ice cream around, lunchtime. Because I don't usually want to eat a lot of ice cream later at night. So I eat it in the middle of the day. And so he realized something, or he learned something, and I had to explain to him that our bodies function on a circadian rhythm. What does that mean? That means that our bodies are responding to different hormones, and the hormones have different effects on the body at different times of the day. Yeah. So that in the morning, our bodies tend to be more sensitive to insulin. What does that mean? That means that in the morning, our bodies give us a bigger response to the things that we eat that have carbs. And so the blood sugars tend to come down better as a result of that in the morning compared to the evening. That means then that as the day goes on, as you move through the day, you will find that, hey, there was something that I could eat in the morning that didn't spike my blood sugar as high. But if I eat that same thing later in the day, my blood sugar goes out of control. And people will say to me, wait a minute, I ate exactly the same thing, the exact same amount, right? And they say that because they don't understand that it really doesn't matter if it's the same thing. It's just that your body is responding differently at different times of the day to the same food. And this is based on a circadian rhythm. So our bodies have this cycle that they go through where insulin comes out. Now, you guys may have heard me talk about the dawn phenomenon. And the dawn phenomenon is this process that the body goes through as it prepares us for the day. So that right around 3-4 o'clock in the morning, the body begins pump us full of growth hormone, epinephrine, cortisol, and that's with the plan of waking us up. So that some people will have a spike in blood sugar in the morning without doing anything. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I didn't eat anything. Well, my blood sugar went up. Yeah, that's because of this change in hormones. Likewise, your insulin works better for a lot of people in the morning versus working in the evening. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the food necessarily you're eating. It just means that your body's responding differently. And practically speaking, what does that mean then? That means that there may be some adjustments that you have to make to the food you eat. What? How? Well, there's some things that you may have to eat in the morning versus eating them in the evening. Why? Because that's how my body works. Is it fair? Nope. But it is. It is how the body functions. So it is naturally better at managing blood sugar later after breakfast than it is after dinner. So timing is important, because if we can adjust some of the things we eat at different times of the day. Now notice, we're not even talking about fasting at this point. We're just talking about the food that you normally would eat, just shifting it around in the day. And that takes you kind of experimenting, because I can't tell you which food is going to spike your blood sugar. You've got to try it. Say, oh, I ate it in the evening and this is what happened. I ate it in the morning and this is what happened. So timing is important as well. So timing. The next one is acidity. Acidity. What does that mean? So there are certain enzymes, and you may have seen, on TV, on the internet, you may have gotten a blog, you may have seen that somebody do something on TikTok, and they dip a piece of bread in vinegar and they eat it. And supposedly this lowers your blood sugar. Now, here's what's happening. It's not that the vinegar is lowering your blood sugar, right? What happens is, because you are eating you're taking in the vinegar, what the vinegar does is it inhibits the enzyme that breaks down sugar or break down carbs. So when you put carbohydrates in your mouth, there are some enzymes. They're called salivary amylase. Salivary amylase. You don't have to know that name. But those are the enzymes in your mouth that as soon as something goes in the mouth, it begins breaking it down. And then it goes into your GI tract. And within the GI tract, in the stomach, for example, there are some other enzymes that continue to break down the sugar. Because your body can't use a piece of bread inside the cell. So what happens is you eat the food, the body breaks the bread or pasta or potato, whatever it is, breaks it down. It takes out the glucose from the bread or the food, and then it uses the glucose as the source of energy. And this all happens because these enzymes are breaking the food down. Well, if I could inhibit the enzyme, if I could stop the enzyme from breaking the food down as quickly, then guess what? I don't get as big a rise in blood sugar, for one. And that food kind of moves through my GI tract. So by the time some of that enzyme is breaking the food down, guess what? It's already moved past the point where my body's going to absorb it. So I don't get as big a spike. And what vinegar does is vinegar slows the rate at which the carbohydrates are broken down into sugar. This means that the sugar enters the bloodstream more gradually, helping to prevent the rapid spikes. And remember, the spikes are what we're trying to inhibit or blunt, because if we get the spikes, we get the insulin. If we get the insulin, then we get all the other things that we just talked about. So the acetic acid in vinegar interrupts the enzyme that digests carbohydrate and, for instance, amylase. And you'll see that there. Okay? So vinegar, that's what vinegar does. Now, vinegar supposedly also helps with making the body more sensitive to insulin. Okay, so not only does it inhibit the ability of the body to break down the carbohydrate into sugar, but it also makes the body use its own insulin more effectively. And once again, remember what we're talking about. We are trying to blunt the spike in sugar. If we blunt the spike in sugar, we blunt the spike in insulin, and then all the different things that we talked about. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. And so that is why you see a lot of people talking about that. Now, the question that people are asking, well, how much? Right? And so it was 2 tablespoons of vinegar that they drank during the study because they were trying to standardize it. Now, I don't recommend that you go out and just drink vinegar. What a lot of people do is they include vinegar as part of their food. So if you're having salad, use the vinaigrette. Okay? Some people will sprinkle some vinegar over their food. You can do that. If you're at a restaurant, dip the bread in vinegar. Sometimes they'll bring vinegar to the table, right? The balsamic vinegar. The question you should be asking is, okay, what about this acidity, right? You said vinegar. Do other acidic things also help? Now, there are less studies that show the benefit of things like lemon juice or lime juice or some of the other acidic fruits that we have, but the idea is the same, right? So there are some studies out there. They're not as vigorous as with the vinegar, but they should work as well, so that when you're making whatever your meal, people who like a little sweetness, right? They can squeeze some orange juice from an orange across it. You can make your own salad dressing with lemon and limes and oranges and so forth. So that should be a benefit as well. Okay, so acidity. The next thing is this idea of retrogradation. And retrogradation. Before I get there, let me talk about something. So when I cook, and if you make pasta, you'll notice that when you finish boiling the noodles, if you kind of leave them in the pot, they kind of get stuck together, right? So whenever you're cooking carbohydrates, pasta, potatoes, rice, and so forth. In fact, there are places where people they will wash their rice over and over and over and over, and they'll wash it until when you put the rice in the water and you let it soak for a little bit, you get that kind of cloudy water that comes off. So what they're doing is they're washing off the starch, the carbohydrate. So whenever we cook carbs, the water gets drawn into the carbohydrate. That's why pasta and rice become soft, or potatoes become soft. And they become textured, and they get into a state where the body can then absorb it because it's taking in the water, and your body can digest it. By the way, the amylase that I talked about a little while ago in terms of digestion, yeah, those amylase, once you put that stuff in the mouth, it starts to break it down. Well, if you take that same dish, the same pasta, the rice, the potatoes, and you let it cool, you put it in the refrigerator overnight. What happens as you put it in the refrigerator, the molecules begin to cool. So whereas before, once you finish cooking it, you put it in your mouth and the body absorbs all of those carbs. When you put it in the refrigerator, you cool it down. Those carbs, those carbohydrates, the sugar in there, they begin to crystallize. And if you warm that up when you eat it now, your body doesn't absorb as much of the carbohydrates. It actually passes through you. So that's the idea of retrogradation. Basically what you're doing is you're taking the food, you've cooked it, and instead of eating it right then, you put it in the refrigerator and you let it cool, and tomorrow when you heat it up and eat it, then your body doesn't absorb as much of the carbohydrate. That is another method of decreasing the spikes in blood sugars. Now, this one takes some planning, right? Because you have to anticipate that, okay, I'm going to make this dish, and I'm going to put it in the refrigerator and let it cool, and then tomorrow we're going to eat it. Now, and as I say to people, it's not an all or none. Some people say, well, I can't plan that far ahead. Well, maybe not for this meal for tonight, but how about the meal for tomorrow or next day? right? So it doesn't have to be, okay, all of the meals you're using this idea, but you're using this idea as much as possible to try to blunt the spikes in blood sugar. Notice that ultimately our goal is to help you to develop habits and behaviors that you can do forever. Right? So we don't want you, well, okay, I'm gonna do this for a week and then I can't do it anymore because I'm not able to do all the meals. Well, we don't want you to necessarily do all the meals. That would be great if you can. But sometimes it's not practical to do that. So retrogradation, another way of decreasing the spikes that we can have in blood sugars so that we can decrease the amount of carbohydrates, amount of blood sugar spikes, and the amount of insulin. And then you've all probably heard of glycemic index. The glycemic index is a measure of how much a specific food increases your blood sugar compared to pure sugar. Right? And it's from 0 to 100. From 0 to 100. So if I take a tablespoon of pure sugar, for example, and I take half a carrot or a piece of carrot and I do the sugar, right? And my blood sugar goes up to, I don't know, say 100. And then I do the carrot and my blood sugar goes to 50. So the glycemic index of the sugar is what? 100. The glycemic index of the carrot is 50. So the carrot doesn't raise my blood sugar as much. And so it's a way of comparing different foods. And as we're talking about the different foods, what we are going to be suggesting is that we try to eat foods that have lower glycemic index. So foods that don't cause as big a spike in blood sugar. Because once again, and I know I keep saying it, y'all, because I want this to kind of get drilled in. Because once we get the spike in blood sugar, insulin has to come out. When the insulin comes out, the insulin causes a bunch of different things. And we'll come back and do a show where we talk a little bit more about all the things that insulin will do. But we've talked about several of those already, right? So puts on weight, causes cravings, causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, can cause high cholesterol and high blood pressure and polycystic ovarian syndrome and on and on and on and on. Right? So what we want to do is we want to eat foods that have low glycemic index. Now, you heard me say a little while ago that for a lot of people, we don't even talk about glycemic index. And we don't talk about glycemic index because their issue is not one of glycemic index. Their issue is one of just eating massive amounts of carbs. So if you're eating chocolate cake every day for every meal, then glycemic index is not your issue. What we need to work on is not eating the chocolate cake every meal. Right? Because they're not even going to notice if we change the glycemic index of the chocolate cake, because it's already 100 probably, because it's pure sugar. So often we want to talk about glycemic index, but there are other things that we need to deal with first. So when we talk about glycemic index, there is a range, like I said, up to 100. And something that has low glycemic index is 55 or less, 55, 60 or less. Excuse me, guys, I'm having some allergy issues. Medium glycemic index is 56 to about 69, 70. And then above 70 and above is considered high glycemic index. So sugar would be in the high glycemic index. Now, notice or be aware that your body, even though we say, okay, something has a glycemic index of 50, for you, a particular food may do or cause a bigger spike than something else, and cause a bigger spike than someone else's body. And as we talked about timing before, may cause a different spike in the morning versus a spike in the afternoon or in the evening. Right? So glycemic index. And then, of course, y'all, Exercise, exercise, exercise. So not exercising is kind of like having a Mustang car in your garage and never driving it, or having whatever your car is, right? I was going to say Tesla, but Tesla's not the same. Right? So having one of those power cars in the garage and you don't drive it. The power that we have within our body in terms of our muscles is incredible. So when we exercise increases the uptake of glucose. So when we're talking about the cheat code, and I haven't said that yet. I keep saying talk cheat. These are the cheat codes, y'all. Right? How do we minimize the spikes that we get in sugar and ultimately spikes in insulin? This is the cheat code. This is the hack. So when we exercise, the muscles, in order for the muscle to move or to work, it has to get energy. And during exercise, it absorbs a lot more sugar to be able to move, to be able to work. And so we're burning sugar so we don't get as big a spike. So if you exercise, if you eat and then go exercise, I'm not talking about high intensity training and weightlifting, all that. I'm talking about going out and walking. If you do that, then your body at that time is the sugar that's coming in, those carbohydrates that are being broken down, that are being brought into the system, the body is going to use those for energy. And then the muscle has this amazing ability where it can absorb sugar without necessarily using insulin. Yeah. So that as you're using your muscles, the sugar is being absorbed and being used by the blood sugar, by the muscles. And so we don't get that rapid spike. And if we don't get the rapid spike, once again, insulin doesn't come out, and we improve our insulin sensitivity as well with exercise. And when we exercise, aside from the food that we just ate and the blood sugar that we just burned as a result of that, your muscles stay active. They stay metabolically active up to 48 hours after exercising. So you're getting a big bang for your buck. So you exercise for 30, 40 minutes, and for the next 48 hours, those muscles are burning more sugar than they would have if you had not exercised. So what do? Hey, about 20 to 30 minutes after you eat, get up and walk. You'll be surprised. So exercise. Once again, we're talking about those cheat codes, right? The cheat codes. And then, how do we deal with naked carbs? What is a naked carb? A naked carb is a carbohydrate that you eat by itself. That is like eating a piece of candy or a cookie or a donut or some carbohydrate alone, right? Just naked carbohydrates. It's like taking a spoon and sticking it in the jar of jam and just eating the jam. Naked carbs. And when you do that, the spike that we get in blood sugar is quick and high. We get a rapid increase as a result of that because there's nothing blunting the carbohydrate. Last week we talked about pairing different foods together. Here is a place where we can pair foods together. So to blunt the rise that you would get in blood sugar, you want to pair it with non-starchy vegetables. You want to pair it with some protein, and you want to pair it with some kind of fat. So avocado is something you can do. So people who are eating chips, right? Chips and dip, right? So avocado. So here's an interesting thing, right? When you go to the restaurant, what's the very first thing they bring you? Where they come over and they ask you, would you like anything to drink? And you give them your order, and they go away, and they come back with the drinks, and they bring with them a basket of bread. Why do you think they do that? Right? Because it stimulates the appetite, y'all. Right? Because that spike that you get, the blood sugar goes up. When the blood sugar goes up, insulin comes out. And what does insulin make you do? What did I just say? Insulin makes you hungry. It makes you crave. It makes you want to eat. Same thing with some of the drinks that they bring. Right? Because that's what happens as a result of blood sugar spikes and as a result of insulin. So when you consume carbohydrates by themselves without anything surrounding them, it's almost like mainlining sugar. All right. Yeah, I know. I use that term. Right. It's like taking an IV, stick it in your arm, and pouring sugar directly in. Because as soon as it goes in your mouth, the amylase breaks it down. The GI tract amylase breaks it down, and it absorbs it, and you get a big spike. And then boom, and then so we're off to the races. Okay, so you get that craving. So naked carbohydrates, mainly processed, they are absorbed like almost instantly. And when we do that, right, so the blood sugar goes up, we get the spike in blood sugar, the insulin comes out, and the insulin deals with the blood sugar, and the blood sugar drops because we get that big spike of insulin. When the blood sugar goes down, we think we're hungry, and so we go eat again, right? So we get this spike in blood sugar. Insulin causes us to be hungry, have the appetite. Now insulin is bringing it down. When we get that drop, then we feel that as a hunger, and then we eat again. So we get through this cycle. That's why a lot of times people will eat carbohydrates, high carbohydrates, lots of carbohydrates, ice cream, cookies, cake, candy, and they're famished. I can't stop eating. And it's because of the effects of the hormones. Okay. All right. So that's the cheat code, y'all. That's the cheat code. We'll come back. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Let's see what we got out here. Let's see. G. Albert says, I've lost about 60 pounds. Second round. First round, 2016. Second round in the past 6 weeks using smaller plates, which means smaller portions, and Ozempic weekly down to 206. Blood sugar 75 in the morning. What? G. Albert in the house. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about. Successes. And I love that. Thank you for sharing. Teresa says, good evening, Dr. Wood and everyone. Okay, I think we saw that one already. Steve says, great job, G. Albert. Hey, Steve, welcome. G. Albert asked the question. He said, white or apple cider vinegar? All the studies that they did they were with apple cider vinegar, but there's no reason to believe that white vinegar doesn't work. But because the studies use the apple cider, that's what a lot of people will promote, right? So apple cider vinegar. Teresa said, are you talking about the apple cider vinegar? Because I have used it for that purpose. Yes, Teresa, that is what we're talking about. Teresa says, could both methods be interchanged? Teresa, which method are you talking about? If you can just put that back in the chat for me. Which method? And then G. Albert says, yep, I also drink about 40 ounces of ginger root, whole lime, and simmer for about 10 hours on top of the stove with a cup of cran apple juice and 1 bag of Earl Grey tea. Not sure if it's healthy or helping. Well, it sounds good, G. Albert. I'm going to have to copy that down and try that recipe. Teresa says, so how do you know what your glycemic index is? Teresa, very good question. And it's not you can't know what your glycemic index is. You can know what the glycemic index of foods are, and you will just have to try the foods and see how they spike your blood sugar. Okay, so there's no way for you to tell, for a person to tell what their glycemic index is. Okay, we can tell what the food is, and I guess I shouldn't say there's no way. There is a way, but it's experimental, right? So how did they come up with the glycemic index of foods? Well, they took people and they fed them the food, and we saw what the blood sugars did. Right, so that's how they come up with all those things. It's kind of like how we diagnose someone, or how we know what insulin resistance is. Right, we say one person is more insulin resistant than the other. Well, what we did was we took people, we put them in the lab, we put an IV in on one arm that has sugar going in, and we put an IV on the other arm that has insulin going in. And a euglycemic clamp is that's what it's called. And what we did was we said, hey, we're gonna keep the blood sugar. We're gonna keep putting in a constant rate of sugar, and then we're gonna see how much insulin it takes to keep this person's blood sugar at a certain point. That's called a euglycemic or normal glycemic clamp. And so that's how we figured out, okay, this one has more insulin resistance than that person, but you can't do that in your normal everyday. There's a formula called the HOMA-IR, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okay. All right. Let's see. So Teresa says, great job, G. Albert. Yes, very good job. And Teresa says the vinegar and timing method, I believe that's what I was talking about. Oh, okay. So very good question. And actually, Teresa, that is a great place for me to kind of give a cap for some of this. Okay? Give a cap for some of this. So let's hop over and let's take a look at this one right here. So what's the cheat code? What's the cheat code? The cheat code really is all the things we just talked about. The acidity, the glycemic index, the exercise, the retrogradation, not dealing with naked carbs, and timing. They're all there. So how does this all work? How do we practically deal with this? That means that at your house, you're going to go about your normal day, and you're going to be eating things. You're going to eat whatever it is that you've decided you're going to eat that day. But as you are planning what you're going to eat in your life, I'm not talking about at this moment right now, I'm about to eat a cookie or about to eat whatever. I'm going to say, oh man, I wonder, is this, right? That's not the point. That's not the time to make that decision, right? Now you can do it, but what I want you to begin doing is I want you to begin planning, okay, thinking generally. Which of these things fit into my life and at what times? Now, if timing is an issue, if you notice that, hey, there's certain foods I eat, and every time I eat them at night, my blood sugar goes up, try them in the morning. And if the blood sugars are better, guess what? Maybe that's something you can switch to using in the morning. But you have to have planned and have to have thought about that ahead of time. Because if right now you're sitting down to eat a bag of chips, guess what? It's already there. You've got to plan. Okay, our normal process, our behavior, the thing that we're going to do as a family, as a person, as a group, is after we eat, we're going to go walk around the block. Or we're going to have a plate, a bowl, a little canter of vinegar on the table whenever we're eating bread, right? We're going to do like they do in the restaurant. We're going to get a little vinegar. We're going to get a little olive oil. We're going to pour it on a plate, and I'm going to sop my bread in it, right? So you're adding that. I'm going to change the type of dressing I use. Instead of eating ranch, I'm going to now do vinaigrette. Okay? So it is incorporating the things in your life that make sense and that fit. One of the main reasons why lifestyle changes don't work is because we try to contort our lives to the change we're making. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to make an effort and be deliberate about it. But there are some things that just don't fit. And if they don't fit, they don't fit. That's okay. Let's try something else. Now, if you are using foods that have a higher glycemic index, right? And notice, right? So there are 6 things that we've talked about. We talked about acidity, glycemic index, timing, exercise, naked carbs, and retrogradation. So if you know that you're using something that has a higher glycemic index, then glycemic index is no longer on the list of things you can do. You've got to pick from one of the other 5 or a combination of the other 5. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm making pasta for lunch, and it's going to be on Saturday. And I know the pasta is full of carbs. You know that. And I'm going to eat it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make pasta on Friday, put it in the refrigerator. So I'm using retrogradation. Maybe instead of having a lunch party, I'll have a supper party or dinner party or wherever, right? And I'm going to pair that with some kind of fat, some kind of protein, so that I'm not just eating a bowl of pasta. I'm going to have some fish with it. I'm going to have a piece of meat with it. I'm going to have some chicken with it. Notice what I've done is I've used several of the cheat codes, several of these hacks to deal with the blood sugar that's going to result from having the elevated carbohydrates. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Let's see. So vinegar. Okay, so Teresa said, okay, got it. Very good. Let's see. G. Albert says, oops, forgot 12 cups of water and 1 cup of chopped ginger root and 1 lemon or lime. Maybe I'll experiment with vinegar. Okay. I like that. Once again, G. Albert, and for everybody out there, I don't recommend just grabbing a cup and just drinking vinegar, right? Because it's very, very caustic and very acidic. But definitely, and vinegar, guys, if you think about it, vinegar actually, if used properly, adds a nice flavor to food. Right? So there's that kind of tanginess to it. Yeah. So the sour, right? So that's all good. G. Albert says, walking sounds like work. Teresa said, G. Albert never tried the lime with the vinegar. Thanks. Yep, makes a lot of sense. All right, well, let's take a look at some numbers here, y'all. Let's hop over and let's take a look at these numbers. So here is my blood sugar. Well, it's supposed to show up there. Let me make one change. Here is my Libre. Right, so that's my blood sugar, 114. And let's come over here, and then I'll go ahead and grab my Dexcom really quickly. And my Dexcom right now just lost the signal, so as soon as that comes up, we'll see what that is. But in the meantime, let's pop over here and let's take a look at what these blood sugars are showing. All right, so let's see. Let's grab one of these. Oops. A little bit too aggressive with that, so the cap came off. Boom. Boom. And then let's grab my Lancet. Get a drop of blood. Oops. Yeah, that was a good drop right there, y'all. Let's see, let that run. And while that's running, I'll have to keep a drop of blood. So 131, 129, okay, is what this is saying my blood sugar is. So you see those are off from what my Libre is saying. And let's go ahead and we're going to see what my ketones are. So remember, as the blood sugars rise, the ketones go up. So I've not fasted since Friday. So what do you think my ketones are going to be? Somebody out there, give me a guesstimate. What do you think they're going to be? All right, so 0.3, right? So not in ketosis, yeah. That makes sense. And then let's see if my Dexcom is giving us a number. So 129. So I like that. What I want to do is I'm going to hop over because I want you to see. I want to go through a couple of things that happened with blood sugars this past weekend. And to do that, I need to get over to my Dexcom, which, as you know, it times out whenever I don't use it for a while. So give me just a second. Let me pull that back up. All right, so let's hop over and let's take a look at that. All right, so you'll see there for the last 14 days, my blood sugar, my average blood sugar is 103, according to the Dexcom. Let me grab this mouse so I can point. Okay, yeah. So average blood sugar 103. There it is. The range is 70 to 180, which is what you see down there. And actually, let me see what happened. Oh, did I lose you guys? I hope not. There we go. Okay. Yeah, everything, all my windows disappeared for a minute. Yeah, so that's my average blood sugar for the last 14 days. My range is 70 to 180. This thing says I'm in target 93% of the time, right? That's that number that you see. And it says that if these numbers continue, then my glucose management indicator, or an estimate of what my A1C would be 5.8. Okay, so I love that. Well, let's go ahead and let's get down because I want to take a look at a couple of things here. All right, so this was something that I did. Let's start with today. Yeah, let's start with today. So here's my blood sugar right around noon. Right, so right around noon, and I started eating. So what I had 2 hamburger patties and a slice of cheddar cheese and a slice of pepper jack cheese. All right, so let's bring this one up. All right, so about 120, and I had that, and so blood sugar. So I got this little spike right here. You see that? Okay, so that's what I ate, but that's not all I got on my plate. What I did get also was I got some onion rings. So started eating here, went up, and I said I'm not going to eat the onion rings, so I put them in my office. And then as I was getting ready, kind of mid-afternoon, because I leave on Mondays early so I can come and get prepared for the show. So as I was leaving, I was like, oh, man, these onion rings are right there. Right? I was being a good steward. I didn't want to throw them away because that's wasting food. And so I said, oh, let me go ahead and eat them. And then I want you to see right there. Look at that. So that was the onion ring. And then look what happens. All right. So we continue to go down. Now, so I want to talk about this right here. And this is something that you guys will see and or hear about. So I want to spend a minute and just talk about it. And that is that double spike that you get. Now, notice that after that second spike, my blood sugar seemed to come down much quicker than after I had this. See that small spike right there? So it went up and it was coming down, and then I ate again. But look at how quickly it came down. Right? And this is that second phase insulin release. And the idea there is that when I ate something that had carbs, and I didn't eat a whole lot of carbs, that my body produced some insulin to deal with those carbs. And that's probably the cheese and whatnot. And the body already had some insulin prepared in the cells. And so when I ate that second meal that had the higher carbs, the body released all of that insulin, and then my blood sugars came down quickly. Okay. Now that is known. That's a theory. Well, not the theory. It is known that can happen. And there are people that will purport that if you want to get a better response on that second meal, to eat a higher carb meal that first time, so that the body is prepared for the second meal, so that you drop the blood sugar. And I understand the theory behind it, but it doesn't make practical sense for what we want to do, right? So we can't say that it makes sense to eat high carbs so that later on my body responds better to carbs. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's second phase. The next thing I wanted to show you, so I want you to kind of remember that. The next thing I want to show you is I want to go way back to, let's see, was that Saturday? Yes. So here was Friday, and remember Friday I broke my fast at 6:45 or 6:30 while we were on the show. And as I ate, my blood sugar started going up. So this is getting into midnight. And then here is Saturday morning, and my sensor actually died. So I didn't change it. But look at the blood sugars, right? So blood sugars 120s and so forth. And so I went and remember I told you we were at the funeral, and so I decided I was going to eat something, and because we got back to the church probably about 4-ish. And so I started eating, and I had 2 pieces of fried chicken. I had, what else did they have? So I had fried chicken. I didn't have any rice. Oh, I had some mashed potatoes. And I want you to see, look at that. Look at the rise in blood sugar. And those were 2 pieces of chicken breast. And they were so good, y'all. Right? And if you remember, if you've been following me, you've seen my blood sugar. This was the first time in like weeks, right, that I had a blood sugar that spiked up above 180. It happened like way back here somewhere. I don't have all of those, but way back here somewhere, I would have to go back and find those. That happened, but I've not had a blood sugar that spiked up that high in like weeks. And so, let's see, where am I? Get back here. Okay, here we are. And so people say, well, does that mean that your diabetes is not in remission? No, it just probably means that I shouldn't have had 2 pieces of chicken. But, right, that doesn't mean you can't. Because if you follow the blood sugars, right, so look at that. So it spiked up, right, it came down, and then overnight, right, so we were up 160, and it continued to drop. And of course here I'm not fasting, right? So we're kind of staying in the 120s, 123. And for those of you in our community, you know that I have a nut fetish. So I eat almonds and cashews, and so anytime you see these spikes right here, that's probably some cashews or some almonds that I ate. Okay. So one thing that I want to talk about before we go, and maybe another cheat that we need another cheat code, is this idea of snacking. There is no physiologic, there's no medical reason for snacking. Your body doesn't need it. Most of us. We snack because of, right? because we snack because of these things: habit, emotions, access, and taste. So as you are in the process, maybe I need to add that as another one of the cheat codes, is there's not really a reason for snacking. Snacking is not a physiologic thing. Snacking is a social, cultural thing that we've developed. You remember when you were a kid and you came home and you're like, oh, I want something to eat. Mom was like, okay, no, we're having dinner here soon. Right? So yeah. All right, y'all. So this is a great place for us to do our thought of the day. So let's hop over and do that right now. All right, and our thought of the day is that mindfulness is the path to a peaceful mind. Mindfulness is the path to a peaceful mind. As we've talked about putting our diabetes in remission and reversing diabetes and getting off of medication, much of what we've discussed really is not a food problem. Much of the things that we've talked about in terms of reversing diabetes have to do with how we perceive the world and how that perception influences us in our access to and our drive and our appetite for food. And so just like in putting diabetes in remission, right, we talk about mindful eating. We talked about being emotionally intelligent. That's another phrase for mindfulness, being aware of how you are feeling, being aware of how the surroundings are affecting you, being aware of how you are interacting with the world and with your community. And if we're mindful, then we are aware of our interaction. We're aware of when our interaction is such that it puts us in a negative place, where it causes detriment to not just our mind, but detriment to our relationships, detriment to us physically, and detriment to the community. Emotional intelligence, mindfulness. So as we are working to put our diabetes in remission, remember, a lot of the things that happen to us are simply side effects of the growth that we will see. They are the additional benefits that come from the process, from the journey on which we find ourselves. There are going to be some hard things for us to look at. There are going to be some hard conversations to have with ourselves. There are going to be some hard memories that we need to deal with. But remember, New Year, New You is not just about this moment. New Year, New You is not just about this year. New Year, New You is a journey of a lifetime. And that journey begins by knowing ourselves and understanding how we are interacting with our community. So mindfulness, y'all, is the path to a peaceful mind. And that is our thought for today. All right. So as we bring this thing down, right? So remember, the cheat code is using these things that we've talked about, these hacks, to minimize the spike in blood sugar. Minimizing the spike in blood sugar minimizes the insulin response. Minimizing the insulin response minimizes our cravings, our drive to eat, minimizes the weight we put on, minimizes our progression into non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and metabolic syndrome and polycystic ovarian syndrome and all the other things that come as a result of that. All right. So what do we do? In terms of acidity? Add some vinegar to your meals. Use some vinaigrette dressing. Use glycemic index foods that are less than 60. Really less than 55. Pre-plan and begin using this idea of retrogradation, right? Take your food, whatever you're making, put it in the refrigerator, eat it tomorrow. Exercise 30 minutes after you eat. Go walking. Try not to eat naked carbs because you need something around it to blunt the spikes in blood sugar. And then begin learning for yourself what are the different foods that your body responds to in different ways at different times of the day. Once again, that's part of mindfulness, knowing yourself, knowing how your body responds. Remember, here on the channel, there is a platform on which we are using. That is our Triple E formula for success. We educate. The shows that we do, the blogs, the podcasts, all of those things are with the idea of giving you data, giving you information, because information is what you need in order for you to understand. When you understand, then you have the tools that we're using, the HEAT model, right? The emotional intelligence that we talked about, the 5 whys, all of those tools are things that you can use because they empower you. They are the things that allow you to implement the discussions that we're having in terms of making change to your life. And then here on the channel, the community is what gives us encouragement and gives us empowerment. So the Triple E formula for success. The HEAT model, remember, these are the things that derail us. So keep an eye for these. These are things that you want to be aware of, that mindful idea of understanding how I work. What are the things that are pushing me to get off track? Habits, emotions, access, and taste. And then our call to action, y'all. Here's the call to action. Number 1, join the challenges. We've had several challenges as we went through the months, as we went through the shows. Number 1, begin fasting for a 24-hour period. Once a week. Figure out your why. What's making you do this? Why do you want to be healthy? Why do you want to reverse your diabetes? Why? Join the challenges. Don't just let the shows come and then go sit on the shelf. Use them, get involved, claim your seat when you get here. Number 2, right? Share your story. Just like we've seen in this chat today, that a lot of people are talking about their benefits and the things that they're doing and the successes that they have. When you tell your successes, then other people are encouraged. When you tell of challenges that you're having, people know that they're not by themselves. The worst thing is to be on a journey and thinking that you're by yourself. I'm excited because you guys are here, because you're part of my community. You help keep me accountable. You don't think I wanted a third piece of that chicken? But I said, well, I can't do that because my blood sugar is going to go up too high. I got to show these blood sugars on Monday. Community. We have our next community meetup that's coming up on the 18th. That's next Thursday. And I'm going to go ahead and put that, I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat so that you can go ahead and do that. If you have registered before, go ahead and register again for me, y'all. What I'm working on is a way so that the people who register for one don't have to register again and they can just come in. But the platform that I was hoping to get that on is not quite ready. So we're going to do a Zoom. Hopefully we'll get that ready for next month. All right, so there is the link that just came through. That's one of the benefits of being here on the live, right? You get to see and you get to get these things, right? So we're not putting this out to the general public. If people are here on the show and they want to join the community and they want to come into the chat, it's great. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions, for me to see your face, for us to talk to each other. Right now, I know I love the fact that we were able to type in. But this allows us to be able to talk to each other directly. Okay? So share your story. Build a community. The community is as strong and as good as you are. And then finally, invite a friend, invite a family member. There are so many people around the world, in the country, in your neighborhood, on your job, in your family that can benefit from this information. Let them know. Form a watch group. Say, hey, let's go watch through these shows. Let's go watch through these things. Let's go ahead and let's work on the challenges together. Okay? And remember, the challenge that we have for this month is you're supposed to be working on a recipe, right? Make this meal. And those are the things right there. You want to make a meal that is whole food based, that minimizes processed foods, that has no sugar added, that has some starchy and non-starchy foods in it, that has healthy fat, lean protein, that's tasty, y'all. It tastes good. It can't be bad. And that has the appropriate portion size. That's the challenge for this month. So you got this entire month to do that. Okay? And that's our call to action. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. I love being in this community. Love hanging out with you all. Let me see if I can put some of these last comments up here. Let's see. Yep. Make lots of sense. So G. Albert says, my fear is that I don't really want to yo-yo my weight back to 265 after this journey. Very much understood, G. Albert. And a lot of things that we're talking about are with the idea of preparing you and getting you into a space where you can maintain much of that. Now, one of the things that I'll Jalba, if you don't mind, I'll use you as an example. One of the things that I tell people and to myself, okay, is we've got to begin learning what the tools are that we need, so that because something is going to happen. Right, so life is going to take a turn. Right, so you're going to have some stressful events go on. Maybe you can't get Ozempic for 1 month. Maybe the insurance changes it; they don't cover it anymore. So all these different things happen. And the question that I often ask people, and the question I want you to address, and a question I want this community to begin grappling with: what are the tools that we're learning that we can use to make this sustainable? Okay. Teresa said, you mix the vinegar with water is better, but G. Albert's idea is good. I like that. He said, thanks. Teresa says 3.7. Teresa, I'm not sure what that was a reference to. She said off by a lot. Knew you just misplaced the decimal point. Oh, 37. Okay, I see. This is still good, doctor. Awesome. G. Albert. When your blood spikes to 180, did you get that high sugar feeling? No, actually, Teresa, I did not get the high sugar feeling. It was it actually felt I didn't feel it at all. Okay. Awesome. Okay, and there is the link. Okay, here we go. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you. So Teresa says she's having a problem registering again. So Teresa, I'll see if I can fix that on my end. Okay, I'll see if I can fix that on my end for you. And I think I have your email from when you registered before, so I'll send you an email with that. Okay. All right. So as always, glad that you're here. Glad that I was able to spend some time with you, y'all. This is Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level, creating the life you've always wanted. And in this year, y'all, new year, new you. Good night. We will see you in our check-in that's coming up here in a couple of days. And then, of course, on our show Monday at 7 p.m. Central. Good night, everybody.